You're listening to Power Talk, Berkeley Electric Cooperative's official broadcast about the cooperative, our communities, and ways to use energy wisely. And now, let's join our hosts for today's episode. Good morning and welcome to Power Talk. This is Micah Ponce, the Communications and Media Specialist here at Berkeley Electric Cooperative, joined as always by Ms. Libby Rowan, the Director of Marketing and Communications.
Good morning, Micah. You know, it's not quite the Artemis II mission, but today we have some heavy hitters, big brains in the room to help us understand some stuff in the next 30 minutes.
I'm glad we're on camera so you can catch the eye roll.
And we have some comedians in the room as well.
Our very special guests that are here with us in studio today are Mr. Mike Fuller, the President and CEO of Berkeley Electric Cooperative. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And a returning guest as well, Mr. Joel Stevens, the Vice President of Money
Thanks for
and
having
Finance. Our payroll guy. That's the guy.
Among other things.
Among other things.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the show, gentlemen. What are we here today to talk about, Libby?
Well, we are here today to talk about the often misunderstood line item on Berkeley Electric bills called the service charge. But, you know, before we dive too deep into that, let's share a little bit of introduction background to these returning guests. Mike, you've been in the co-op business for what, 35?
Several years.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for trying to call me out, though.
How long you been at BEC? You know, what's your favorite part of the job?
6 years, probably.
Mm-hmm.
It's close to that.
And why are we the best co-op you've ever worked at?
It's got to be the employees.
Yeah, yeah, especially those in this room.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Joel, what brought you here? What questionable decisions did you make that landed you in this room today?
Oh, goodness. Well, I've been here 9 years.
Wow.
And no questionable decision. I'm just lucky to be here.
Aww.
I'm so happy.
So, but before your co-op career, you were,
It's been co-ops nonstop pretty much.
well, the feared auditor of
Yes.
co-ops prior to joining the team.
Yes, I tried never to use the A word because it makes people nervous, but it wasn't that kind of auditor exactly. But yeah, straight from college, so about 20 years now.
Yeah.
Just turned 40 last week.
Whoa.
Oh, me too.
Had a birthday recently as well. We're all just sort of
Hey, there we go.
birthdaying it up.
Yeah.
I'm a little older than that, but
Yeah, I'm tipping toward the other
I don't
end
know.
of 40.
Am I the
50?
oldest? Am I the oldest guy in the room, or gal, or whomever?
Probably that.
Oh,
I assume it's Libby.
I don't know. You and Mike? You may be a year older than Mike.
54.
I got him.
Oh, okay. Well,
He's not saying though.
No, just by a couple minutes.
It's
You know, it's
close.
just
Yeah,
you know.
It's close.
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, anyway. So, service charge on our bill. Anybody who gets service, residential bills, I should clarify. Anybody who gets a residential bill from Berkeley Electric will see that service charge on there. And it's misunderstood. Some people think it is what it isn't, don't understand what it is. Before we get into what all it pays for and that sort of thing, why is our bill broken up like it is? And wouldn't it just be simpler, Mike, to have just a flat kilowatt charge?
You may have to break me out, and I do see you have talking points, but I'll be honest, I did not read them.
Oh, boy.
So you can jump in and cut me off at any time. When our board, and one of the primary things that they do along with setting policy is looking at our rates. So we periodically do a cost of service study, a rate study, if you will, and the purpose of that is to ensure that our different rate classes are paying their fair share of what our bill is. So if we put everything into a kilowatt hour charge, it may, this is a made up number, but it may be 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So the person that may live in a less efficient home that has a electric furnace would unfortunately be paying a disproportionate share of of what they should be paying. So if you take an easy example is, let's just say it's a well pump, or let's say it's a hunting cabin. Okay, so that hunting cabin may have a few times in the year that it uses more, but the rest of the year the usage is very small.
Yeah.
So their bill may be $20 a month. But what this does is it ensures that everyone pays their fair share. And I know you said we'll get into this, into the fixed cost.
Yeah.
So it actually helps by having a service charge where it needs to be, actually helps our consumers that may tend to use more on a monthly basis, and just makes it proportionate. And that's one of the considerations that the board had when we had that adjustment a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Was what's the fairest thing and how is it going to be the least impactful to our members.
Yeah. So Berkeley Electric is a not-for-profit electric cooperative, and it was created 80 plus years ago by the community that we serve still today, by members coming together to create it. And because we're not-for-profit, as you're saying, we have to distribute fairly the costs that we incur as a cooperative to everybody we serve. So you might have a big family that, lots of showers, lots of laundry, that their kilowatt hour usage is much higher than somebody hunting cabin or somebody with solar panels.
And if that higher kilowatt hour charge was in that family's embedded in that, they would be paying substantially more.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure, the board wants to make sure that everybody's paying their proportionate share.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we had, and Joel and I was talking about this, was it our February bill? February bill was about $45 million.
Wow.
So that's the bill that we got from our wholesale power suppliers. So then how do we turn around, because we've got to collect the money, because as you said, we're not for profit. What is the fairest thing to all of our members to ensure that we're not cross-subsidizing and everybody's paying their fair share? So actually a higher service availability many times can help with that rate pressure, because we don't have to have as large a kilowatt hour charge.
Yeah. And, like I mentioned, the service charge we're talking about for residential customers or members, the average homes that we serve. But we do have other rate classes, but no matter what rate class you're in, we want everybody, whether you're a big business or a homeowner or just a residential member, to pay their fair share and only their fair share.
That's right. And because we're cooperative, at the end of the day, if each of those rate classes, dependent upon how they use it, any of that margins then turns around and gets allocated back, and it gets returned to those rate classes anyway.
Yeah.
So we've got to ensure that they're paying their fair share, contributing to margins, which then we turn around and give back. But we have mortgage obligations just like anyone else. So yeah, we've got to
insurance.
Those are all in fixed cost, and Joel will talk about that in a minute. So.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to look ahead, make sure we're not going to mention this later, but also I think it's important to point out that, of course, everybody's worried about, their Berkeley Electric bill. We're talking to our members, but the service charge is not something that's unique to Berkeley Electric.
No.
Right.
This is an industry standard type of thing. Electric utilities, all types of utilities, recover their fixed costs through some type of facilities charge, service charge, account charge. It's called a bunch of different stuff. And sometimes, like we mentioned, it is rolled into the energy charge. We had ours rolled into the energy charge at one time as part of the facilities charge. But over time, as the co-op has evolved, the membership, the makeup of the membership has grown, the number of members have grown, technology has changed. And so that's like the rate studies that Mike was talking about. We have to continually look at the cooperative as we go through time and figure out what's the best way, the fairest way to make sure that our folks, are paying the bill that they need to pay, but also, we recover what we need to keep affordable and reliable power flowing to them.
Yeah, I'll add to that a bit. And when we talk about that charge, and I'll, maybe Joel's going to talk about what's embedded in that fixed charge, but if we look at just what our cost is doing, and we look at when we came out of COVID, what material cost did. That all gets embedded, so that puts upward pressure on what our fixed cost is, because that transformer, although it's there for the energy and capacity, we still have to pay for that regardless of anybody's using it or not. So that's part of that fixed cost, that regardless of the energy that's going through it.
Yeah.
And as that price increases, it costs all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think members would struggle to find any power provider that doesn't have a fixed charge of some sort, regardless of what they call it. It might be facility fee, it might be service availability charge. Ours is called service charge. And so you've got two primary components on your bill. One is the energy charge. That's meant to represent what we're paying for the power that you've consumed from our power provider, in rough shapes. Then the service charge is meant to represent everything else we have to do, the materials that we have to buy that Mike mentioned, any plant that we have to build or improve or replace, customer service, accounting, all of the other employees that we have here that work to provide service to our members. So everything else we do other than power, actually buying the power, is meant to be covered by the service charge.
And Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, but the energy charge is largely just a pass through.
Yes.
So, you know, that's why we have a team who is dedicated to helping you use just the amount of power you need or want to use in your home or business.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't hurt our books if you use less power, because it's largely designed as a pass through.
If our service charge is set appropriately, you could use next to nothing, and Berkeley Electric would be neutral to that.
Yeah.
And I mean, like when we're talking about the pass-through charge and everything, in terms of like the amount that we spend on energy, how much of our energy dollar that we collect from members goes to approximately like 50%, 60%, 70%? How much of that it goes to just paying for the energy that we provide to our members?
It's been in the high 70s lately. I've been here 9 years. I've never seen it below 70 for a single month.
So an easy way to think about that is every dollar we collect, and last month or the month before it was 78 cents out of every dollar goes back to power supply.
And
So
so
that's what we live on, is that thinner margin, and part of that thinner margin, or that 12%, is also embedded is a fixed cost. So that's why it's so important that power supply and the energy component, and that we're billing appropriately.
Yeah. So, Mike, you mentioned a rate study, and we've already talked about how important it is for a not-for-profit that each member pays their fair share of running the business, and only their fair share. What does a rate study look at? How often do we do it? Let's talk a little more about rate studies.
Rate studies in and of themselves, you can get down in the weeds very quickly. Part of it becomes philosophical in nature, in how do we, it starts with how we're billed. Are we billed on the capacity, the demand charge? Is it the energy charge? The components that go into that. But at the end of the day, the board wants to be as close to making sure that each class of members contribute their proportionate share. And of course, the residential class is the largest, but the industrial can stand alone, the commercial, and each class is making equal contributions to the cooperative, paying their fair share, contributing to margins. But it is something that's necessary. The board needs it in order to ensure that we're paying fair and equitable rates to all of our members. And we'll do it, I'm not going to say we're doing it constantly, but every, Joel, 3 to 5 years probably, generally speaking, just to ensure that we're in the right place. The worst thing we could do is wait 10 years and then figure out, oh my gosh, we
need a 30% rate increase. That's not what we want to do.
Micah, why'd you bleep that out? Those are bad words.
To be clear, we do not need a 30% rate increase today.
but it is just ensuring that there's not one rate class that we're frankly losing money on.
Right.
And in an ideal world, and our margin is substantially, when I say margin, that's the rate of return, is substantially smaller, because we're a cooperative. We're not trying to enhance our stockholders, because we don't have stockholders. We're not trying to make a lot of money. We got to pay our bills. We've got to we've got mortgage agreements, we've got those types of things, but we're going to give it all back anyway.
Yeah.
So we have no need to try to recoup a 12% return on investment to give to a stockholder.
Yeah.
We're going to float along and try to make just enough that we can pay all of our bills. And in a normal year, we should, in an ideal world, we should be able to return those funds.
So, we talked about rate studies. We hire an independent contractor to do that. That's not something we do.
We do. And in fact is, I 100% believe that we could do it ourselves. That's how engaged in the process that we are. But I think, and I sit on other boards as well. But I think it's good to have that third party perspective. And it doesn't look like Joel and I are trying to disproportionately give one class versus another.
Right.
So an outside third party, and I think it's just good governance.
Yeah.
It's the fiduciary duty of the board to ensure that we're getting an outside look at our rates, and it's typically, there's probably, for us, there's probably a handful that's what they do.
Yeah.
And we look at different ones. It's not a cheap process, but it's a necessary process to ensure that we're, at the end of the day, we're doing the right thing.
So we're doing that every 3 to 5 years.
Right.
What does growth do to our rates? If you've driven on any street in the Low Country the last 10 years, houses are popping up everywhere and traffic's crazy.
Growth can come in, and Joel jump in anytime. Seems like I'm doing all the talking. Growth does a couple things. Number one, it takes a lot of money for growth. So the balancing act is trying to make sure that our current members are not paying for new members to come on and enjoy the things that they've invested in for years. So it goes into that contribution to margin to ensure the new folks are coming in and it's not costing the existing folks. But at the end of the day, the more kilowatt hours that we sell, the more folks that we have on this service charge, it helps spread that fixed cost out. If we've got X amount in fixed cost divided by 100,000 versus divided by 150,000, that brings downward pressure on that fixed cost. So that's where it helps. Yes, it costs money, but if we do our jobs, at the end of the day, it's a net benefit to everyone.
And that brings in a third concept, too, that Mike was mentioning. If you have a master plan development or something like that where there's going to be 1,000 homes, well, then you can get to a place where you ask for contribution and aid from the developer up front to help pay for some of those items that we've got to construct.
Right.
Because that's the expensive part of growth, is we've got to, let's say we've got to spend $50 million a year to build new power lines to new homes, which is our duty to serve those new homes. So that can help with that. But the rate study, two main things it does. It says, are you getting the right amount of money overall? And are you getting it from the right classes of member? So we've only got 4 or 5, 6 classes of members, and we put people into buckets based on what their usage type is and what rate they're on, things like that. So then you categorize people together and just make sure that you're getting the right money from the right people.
I think that the other thing that we've got to remember is our bills, the bills that Berkeley Electric pays, varies by month to month too. We don't have a stagnant bill that says, okay, we've got to collect 45 minutes. It's based on primarily the weather. There's other things that come into mind, but there's things that's frankly outside of our control. We look at that $45 million bill. A lot of that came from the fuels, because the wholesale market for natural gas, which fired the power plants, which we don't own any power plants directly, but that impacted rates. And again, 78 cents out of every dollar. So as those things come into play, we know what the rate is, but then there's I don't know if you want to call it a catch-up, but there's a just to actual. And if that fuel charge is higher, we still have to pay it. And that's a reflection of what the wholesale power market is doing, and not just in generation and capacity, but also in natural gas or coal. A disruption in the coal. There was a couple of years ago when there was a fire in a coal plant in Illinois that impacted our rates. That seemed like a long ways away, but because that fire impacted the ability for them to get more coal, we had to get it from somewhere else, and that drove cost.
Yeah.
Well, we've been talking a lot about from the co-op perspective, but when it comes to the members, say for instance, Joel, we're looking at the poles outside their home. They've been there for 30 years. The pad mount transformer has been there for years. A lot of times we hear, there's nobody been down here doing any maintenance on my particular lines. So why am I still paying for these poles and wires? Why am I having to pay for the growth in other parts of the thing? I've already paid for my poles and wires. Why am I still paying the facilities or service charge?
I guess we've got two things. One is we will have to come replace that pole at some point. So it's accumulating some dollars in the bank so that we can do that when it's time. And of course, we're not going to replace one before it needs it, because that would not be a responsible or frugal way to operate with our members' money, because it's all our members' money. The other is that we've got people working here that have to get paid that aren't part of that kilowatt hour charge. That's your customer member service, accounting, HR, operations, maintenance, engineering. There's so many
Communications.
I'm so sorry. Communications. We've got a lot of people that do a lot of valuable things for our members that's not part of that kilowatt hour charge.
Yeah, the IT that runs our billing systems. We mentioned taxes and insurance. All of those things come due at some point throughout the year.
Yes.
And even with taxes, and we pay a substantial amount of taxes. But then at the end of the day, we also know that those taxes go to the ambulance districts, they go to fire districts, they go to the school systems. So by sheer nature of paying our county taxes, it helps us and our communities.
That's a good one to mention. A lot of people might assume because we're a not-for-profit, we don't pay taxes. Well, yes, we don't pay income taxes, but last year we paid over $13 million in property taxes. And that, as Mike said, goes back to the fire departments and the schools and to maintain infrastructure through the counties.
We are in Berkeley County. I'm not sure where we rank in the other two counties, but in Berkeley County, we're the number 2 taxed entity. So we contribute to that, and that's part of what we do. But then that ultimately has to be paid for.
Right. And if you're a residential member and you own your home and you get that homestead exemption, I think the rate is 4% for property taxes, the assessment rate. Ours is 10.5. So electric utilities pay a pretty high tax rate.
Yeah. So, Mike, we've talked about the breakdown of every dollar, that 70+ cents of each dollar the co-op collects goes to buy that wholesale power, and then 30 cents or less goes to those fixed costs. Let's talk a little bit about long-term infrastructure projects and why those are important and how the fixed costs help cover that.
So when we look at, we have, and I think this is where you're going into construction work plan?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we look at, kind of an easy way to think about it is we have a model of our system. And with embedded in that model, sometimes, ideally we know when new subdivisions are coming on, and we don't fill up 1,000 new homes right off the bat. But we also know that, yes, that's going to fill up. So we know that for this feeder, for this substation, we're constantly building new substation, building out new feeders. So that's what's part of what's in that construction work plan. And safe, reliable, and affordable. Affordable is kind of a loose term right now because it's all expensive.
Yeah.
But the reliability is based upon that. What is it going to cost? And as Joel said too, we have an obligation to serve. When a new subdivision comes into our area, we can't say, we don't think we want to deal with it.
Take a pass on this one. No.
Yeah. No, that isn't how it works. We have an obligation that we have to serve that. So we have to maintain our system. And embedded in that is, are we ensuring that our conductor is the right size? And we'll notice it, especially here. We're trying to do the prudent thing and bury as much of our facilities underground as we can. We made that conversion, 4 or 5 years ago, where we now have more underground than we do overhead. And if you look annually, our amount of overhead, the miles is going down, and the underground is going up substantially. We're trying to do the prudent thing with our members' money for safe, reliable power.
Yeah. And, you know, Berkeley Electric, the name is a little misleading to some folks, that we serve beyond Berkeley County. We serve portions of the Tri-County. And our service territory has diverse needs. You know, the barrier islands have certain equipment needs, and the placement of equipment to reduce the risk of flooding, that sort of thing. Our more rural areas that are remote, and maybe the member per mile is lower.
Right.
And we're having to balance all of that. And I know recently we've gotten some federal funding and grants to help shore up some of the reliability in some of those more rural areas. So, you know, we're not collecting it all just from the members, but we're trying to be smart and good stewards, and, you know, getting partners where we can to help offset some of those costs.
Right. We've got areas, you know, if we look around Francis Murray National Forest, that is one of our least dense areas, and then you look at Cane Bay next, and you know, overall our system is just over 20 meters per mile, but there's areas of our system that are less dense.
Yeah.
We also have areas of our system that's exposed to salt water. So we try to, and in fact try to be proactive.
Yeah.
In doing that too.
Because similar to our rate structure, where everyone pays their fair share and only their fair share, every member matters equally. You know, whether you're in a remote area or a dense area, we care the same about that you get reliable power.
And when we look at that, an easy way to think about that is, okay, if we didn't share in those costs amongst that rate class, whoever lived closest to the substation would have the cheapest rate, because they don't have to maintain the vegetation. They don't have to worry about every pole that comes after them.
Yeah.
So whoever lived on the end of the line would have a very expensive rate. But because we're a cooperative, we share equally. That's why the kilowatt hour rate within that rate class is the same.
Well, one of the things that we've mentioned several times throughout the show is that, you know, Berkeley Electric Cooperative is a not-for-profit electric utility, you know, and that makes us a little bit different from other folks and when it comes to the electric industry. And like Mike mentioned earlier, as a not-for-profit, it doesn't necessarily behoove us to make a pile of money, because we're just going to turn around and return it to our members. And we do that in something that we call capital credits. So Joel, can you give us a little bit more of a breakdown as to how capital credits factor into a member's bill?
Absolutely. Yeah. The way that we are able to operate as a not-for-profit, and all co-ops are able to, is that once you take revenues minus expenses, what's left over is called margin. And that gets allocated into all the members' individual names based on how much they purchased during the year. So let's say that margin is $10 million. You get a little, you get a little, you get a little, based on how much you purchased. And that goes into an account for you called your capital credit account. And then on a yearly basis, the board will determine whether we have enough funds to retire some of those capital credits, to actually give them back. So if you're an active member, you would get a bill credit on your bill to return those to you. If you're not an active member any longer, you would get a check in the mail, just because we don't have a way to put it on your bill anymore.
Well, you said if the board will look at our finances and determine, I know that I've been here 26 years, but in that amount of time, I can't ever recall a time when we haven't
You are correct.
had enough money to return to our members.
I think maybe Hurricane Hugo for 1 year we didn't, something like that. So
I'm not that old. I haven't been here that long. I was in high school. Thank you very much. So, I'll tell you what.
I was in the third grade.
Did you have a mullet?
We're not
Oh, that's
discussing
not a no. That's not a no.
We're not discussing
Yes.
that. Yeah, the answer is yes. And a widow speak. So, but that's neither here nor there. But so, in that 26 years time, we've always had a couple million at least that I know that has been returned to our members. May not amount to a whole lot depending on how new a member you are, or like you said, how much energy you use, but it's something, and
Correct.
It's something that you usually don't get from other electric utilities. So that is one of the reasons that cooperatives are just a little bit different.
And the way we do it right now is that we give some of our yearly retirement to the oldest year outstanding. Let's say 2002, I think is our number right now. And then we'll give some to the most recent year of margins. I guess coming up, it'll be the 2025 year.
Well, folks, if you don't like to do math like me, you can find out more about capital credits and the other ways to save energy on how to pay your bill at berkeleyelectric.coop. And we thank these gentlemen for coming in and trying to explain a fairly high-level subject in terms that somebody like me can understand. So thank you for tuning in to Power Talk. This is the official broadcast of your electric cooperative, and you can catch up on past episodes on streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. And as always, get a behind-the-scenes look on Berkeley Electric's YouTube channel. So until next time, this is Power Talk, signing off.